add in any illness that we want. There are ideas that we have moving forward in how we can keep track of other illnesses and potentially get them added, but that's going to take a lot of coordination with other communities across the nation who are also recipients of this program, but are also seeing those same illnesses. So RECA, the first thing it does is it's an acknowledgement by the federal government and it's an apology. And the compensation amounts, if you are sick with one of the primary cancers, are $50,000, or you can choose to have your medical bills reimbursed, and that has no cap. So the estimated price tag on the reimbursements, if somebody is currently ill, are sitting right at about $100,000. For some illnesses, a little over, for some, maybe a little under. The other thing unique about the RECA program that was just written in for Missouri is that we have what's known as survivor benefits. The RECA program has been around since the 1990s. It's just that we have never been added to it. And the reality is we should have been the first community. The other communities out west that have benefited from RECA didn't know we existed. And that's wild considering if not for St. Louis and our processing of uranium, we sent our uranium out to New Mexico, to Trinity, so that the development of the nuclear weapons program could occur out there and the testing. But they were unaware of that. They didn't know that it was our uranium that they were receiving. So there was quite a bit of educating that had to go on, not just with the elected officials whose states already qualified for RECA and needed it reauthorized, but the other states that wanted to, like us, finally be added to a program that they should have already been in, such as Utah, parts of Arizona, Colorado, Kentucky, Tennessee. The other thing new in this program is for the first time ever, processing sites were added. Our sites in St. Louis, downtown Malincrot, and the Weldon Springs site out in St. Charles County next to Francis Howell, those are all uranium processing sites. And why those were never added in, we're not sure. But a lot of work and a lot of coalition building went into the past 2 years, much of which Representative Doug Clemens took part in a lot of those educational trips to DC with us, and a lot of the, frankly, deeply political and policy building workshops and phone calls that we did every other week with everyone from impacted communities. The one thing that I will share, and I think that this is something that is so important. I know that looking at DC right now, you see a lot of hopelessness. You see a lot of, that's really kind of a prevailing feeling. But I will say this, in the 2 years that we spent going to DC, we made a little over 10 trips. Karen and I have seen so many minds changed. And I would just remind you all that politicians still change their mind. Good advocacy, good conversations, consistent conversations do lead to people changing their minds and coming and switching their sides on issues. And I think that that's one of the most important things, even just in our overall 13 plus year fight here in St. Louis, in the advocacy surrounding these sites that we have seen. And one of the lessons, always leave room in a conversation for someone to change their mind. And so moving forward, we will make
I did,
sure.
I'm sorry.
Did you? No, go ahead.
I did receive the list.
Okay.
It took a little while to get it through.
And I apologize for not sending that earlier. We've been a little bit busy, but this is the list, the covered zip codes. and the purpose of RECA, which is compensation for exposure to Manhattan Project waste. That's the other thing that's very important. Many of you elected officials and those of you on the call, RECA is specific to the Manhattan Project. We have a lot of contaminated sites in St. Louis with other types of contamination. And yes, we are all deeply concerned about that. But we cannot add a site to this program unless we can prove that the type of waste they have is from the Manhattan Project. This program is administered through the Department of Justice, and they are very selective, and the burden of proof to even really be able to qualify for this program is still pretty substantial. The eligibility, this is where it gets a little tricky. So this is predated back to 1949. And the reason that date is chosen is because that is the first document that we have ever seen, the earliest, where the federal government knowingly acknowledges that this waste is harmful and dangerous. And yet in that document, it decides to let it continue leaking into Coldwater Creek. So we needed that document to prove that date. And that means that anybody exposed after that date is eligible for this program, even if they have already passed away. There are survivor benefits. So if somebody lived and was exposed in one of these zip codes, lived, worked, or went to school in one of these zip codes for 2 years and came down with this list of cancer and is no longer alive, their beneficiaries are eligible for $25,000. And that will be determined by the Department of Justice who the beneficiaries are, and that amount will be split among them. So the compensation, like I said earlier, is if you have one of those cancers currently and you qualify, you lived, you worked, or you went to school in one of those impacted zip codes for 2 years, then you are eligible for $50,000, and that's tax-free. It's not taxed, or reimbursement for medical bills ongoing with no cap. The difficult part of this program is going to be the proof, the burden of proof, being able to access those documents that you need to show that you lived, worked, or went to school in one of those zip codes. The amount of time and energy we spent keeping the went to school portion in was a lot. Many of you may or may not remember that we had the school DSEG program that happened where many students who lived in the city of St. Louis were able to be bused out to different schools. And many of those schools were in an impacted zip code, which is why we fought so hard to keep that provision in. We also needed that in because of Francis Howell. Harvey, do you have the Francis Howell
Yeah.
map, the St. Charles map that you can put up? So when he puts this up, I'll explain a little.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a sec. Well, give me a second. I'm fat fingering things here, making a mess out of it. I gotta reopen it. I accidentally closed it. It's like
You're
just another
fine.
moment to find the right map. Ready to go. Of course, it's the last one I opened. There it is. I'm sure that. That should be it.
Yes, that's
Okay.
it. So if you see that star in the middle, that's the Weldon Spring Uranium Feed Mill plant that Mallinckrodt operated out in St. Charles. And it was operated less than 1,000 feet from an already existing school. And that school, Francis Howell, was really one of the only schools operating for a very long time out there. Parts of St. Charles County look so different now than they did even just 20 years ago, much less 40, much less going all the way back to the time frame that the plant that you see in the starred area operated. And so many people living in these surrounding zip codes, their kids went to school there. It was the only option. There weren't any other schools to go to. And so that is why that provision was so important. We are launching a website. It should be ready to go tomorrow that will have really great links for places that you can go to get this documentation. You know, even if you have a loved one that has passed away and they passed away from cancer a long time ago and you can't find medical records at a hospital, maybe the hospital has closed, or maybe, you didn't keep those medical records and you can't go back. One of the things you can do, for instance, is to request what's known as a long death certificate from the state of Missouri. And that will actually have listed, even if your loved one died of, say, like a heart attack. If they had one of those cancers, it will also be listed on that death certificate. So there are different ways that you can go to find those documents. And that is something that if you're an elected official, I would anticipate that you'll probably get a lot of phone calls from constituents, asking how to get those documents. I know we're working closely right now with St. Louis County because that's going to be an issue for them, right? They have the senior tax freeze and all of that going on, but they're also going to probably be faced with a tremendous influx of people wanting to get a hold of these documents. And as you can imagine, people getting probably very angry if they have to wait months and months and months for them. So, does anybody right now, I know that's a lot, have any questions?
I have a question, Dawn. This is Gretchen. Do we have any idea when the actual form or whatever document we're going to be using from the feds is going to be ready with the exact information and details that we're going to need? I mean, I've heard some rumors of January. I've heard some of late fall. I just was curious if you have any feel of any kind of a time frame. And one of the things we're starting to tell my constituency at least is just start gathering documents in anticipation that
Yes.
you may need the death certificate. You may need this. You may need a baptismal record. You may need, some sort, whatever proof you need to prove that you live there. Just start gathering those. You may not need them, but be proactive, because people are anxious. They want to get started getting things together. So that's kind of like what we're telling them. Just start getting anything you can to show any proof, but I'm just a little interested to know if you have any information or details about when the actual, form or, procedure is going to be in place.
Sure, sure. So our conversation this morning with Senator Hawley's office, they're working with Senator Schmidt, but they're also working with all the other senators from the other impacted communities. They are still hopeful that early this fall, that application will be available. Missouri's application is going to be its own, and it's going to look different than other states because we have different qualifications for ours. And one of the things that we'll be doing, and I'm glad you're on this phone, Councilwoman. We will be getting with elected officials because we want to see, once a draft copy of the application comes out, we want to be able to look at it. We know that the senators are all pushing for a very easy, no longer than 8-page application to make it so that everybody can fill it out, right? You won't need the advanced help of lawyers and whatnot. But we want to be able to see it and give you guys a chance to see it and just give your feedback on things that you think might need to be changed or whatnot. The Department of Justice seems extremely open to making sure and working with community members on the ground and making sure that this application is easy and that if there's anything else that they haven't thought of, being willing to take that into consideration. The other thing, so when this legislation was being written, there is a little clause in it that is very important to Karen and I know Representative Clemens, which was that the Department of Justice has the ability to case by case review applications and use alternative documentation to prove and get somebody in this program. And what that means is that they understand that because this is retroactive, right, going all the way back to 1949, they understand that good records were not kept and whatnot, and that some people may struggle with what is or is not acceptable proof. And so there will be a dedicated phone number and whatnot that people can call with questions to actually speak with somebody from the Department of Justice on what they will or will not accept. One of the things that we're telling people, in addition to what you said, which is so important, which is if you have them or you have the ability to get them now, is to also, it's not going to cost anything to apply. You know, there will be, you know, you will have to mail in your documents, so there will be a small cost with that, but you may as well go ahead and apply. If you think that somebody qualifies but you're not sure, the Department of Justice, it's still worth having them look it over and give their opinion. We also understand that there will probably be an appeals process. So if somebody is denied, there will be the ability to go back and get for whatever reason, if they didn't have sufficient documentation, to go back and find more and apply. The other thing that is really, really difficult to explain to people, we get a lot of questions right now. Why can't we sue? And that is a loaded question, but if we could have sued, we would have done it 30 years ago, 40 years ago. We can't sue the federal government for this. There are congressional acts, such as the Price-Anderson Act, that apply when you sue for anything radioactive in the United States of America. And what that means is, yes, technically you can sue the feds or somebody for exposure to radiation, whether it's a reactor or this. However, you have to prove on a case-by-case basis the specific dose that you were exposed to. And you have to actually go back and prove individual illnesses and show, you know, if you lived along Coldwater Creek, how many times you swam in the creek and where you were standing and what the soil measurements would have been. None of that data is available. You know, for decades, people swam and played and lived along Coldwater Creek. And it wasn't until a few decades ago that there were even people like the Army Corps of Engineers and EPA that were doing soil samples. So there is nothing for these people, if they went to try and sue, to be able to prove dose reconstruction. The case would be thrown out of court. So RECA was enacted in 1990 because of this. The same thing's true with the downwind community. They can't prove the specific amount of radiation they got from playing outside on a day when a nuclear weapon was detonated 200 miles to the west of them. And that is why Senator Orrin Hatch developed this legislation and worked on it, because there had to be a form of compensation out there for those of us that had been knowingly harmed. And there had to be a way to compensate and acknowledge that. But I will just say our country was unwilling to do away with the Price-Anderson Act. And that Price-Anderson Act was put in place to protect the nuclear industry and the reactors in the event that something like Chernobyl happened. They passed, and I know people like Representative Clemens, who's vehemently nodding his head. He's aware of this. We feel like the Price-Anderson Act is horribly unconstitutional, because if this were any kind of waste, any kind of toxic waste, we could sue. But because it's radioactive, that's been taken away from us, and not just us, but the people across the United States, all to protect the nuclear industry. Harvey, you're on mute.
Of course. Thank you. I have a couple of questions. First, how many people do you think will be eligible from the St. Louis and St. Charles area?
Do you mean eligible that are currently alive fighting cancer, or do you mean eligible including family members that have had loved ones that have passed away?
Well, if you have two separate numbers, okay.
We don't. What we have is the Congressional Budget Office score that looked at current cancer rates. that applied to these specific cancers, but they also went back, tried to retroactive look at a few of the cancer rates going backwards. They didn't estimate a number of people. Instead, they estimated a dollar amount, which was about 3.54 billion of this $7.7 billion bill.
That's just in St. Louis County and St. Louis and St. Charles
That's
areas, the
just
zip
from
code.
Missouri's portion of the RECA bill.
Wow. Wow. That's quite an accomplishment. Quite an accomplishment for both of you. The other question I have is, well, first up, does anyone else have any questions while people are contemplating? The other question I have is, there's a lot of people interested in just how you accomplished all this. What would you say were the top three reasons why a legislator that you were talking to changed their mind?
It's the power of people telling their stories, of real people showing up in person or writing emails, and being willing to live out their trauma and their heartbreak for the world to see. I think,
When
go
Dawn
ahead,
was
Karen.
when Dawn was talking about you know, changing people's minds, we walked into offices in DC where we had talked about our stories and told our stories, told other people's stories from St. Louis that had given us permission and whatnot. And these people they didn't know, first of all, they didn't know about St. Louis. They didn't know that this had happened. Um, and they really left us feeling very defeated. When we left some of those offices, we were like, there's no way that we can change their mind. We're defeated. And there was the one time when we got to actually go and watch the vote happen. And we were in the Senate.
Gallery.
Yeah, in the gallery. And we were watching one by one. And we knew when a couple of these senators walked in that made us feel so defeated that, well, they were going to be a no. And they actually voted yes. And we just couldn't believe it. And it was amazing. I think that right there was one of those feelings that was, we did it. We actually did it. We changed their mind after listening to our story and really pulling on their heartstrings, I think. They knew that this was real. We weren't dots on a map. We were real people there telling our story.
St. Louis carried this legislation to answer the other part of your question, how minds were changed. St. Louis carried this legislation because I got to tell you, we're the worst. Out of all these communities that are included in RECA, there is no place like this where there is radioactive waste in a 14-mile creek still after 70 years that's in people's backyards. And when you show documentation of that, when you show Westlake and that it was on the surface of a landfill since 1973, and you actually lay that in front of people, we had people that sat back and went, holy shit. And they said, well, this is a really expensive bill. But there were actually, the fight shifted actually towards the end, where I think that we could have just gotten Missouri covered because we were the worst. And I think having to use our leverage to pull everybody else along, right, ended up doing it. But the other thing, we had some champions. This waste makes everybody sick. Do not let any government official, any agency ever gaslight you into thinking differently. Because even elected officials that were members of the Freedom Caucus, like from Arizona, Paul Gosar has Parkinson's disease from this. And as staunch and as fiscal as he was, and he did not like the price tag, he was sitting in front of us, living out and telling us his personal story and his family's stories. And it's that deep connection when you are sharing your trauma and your pain. It's that moment that he's not a congressional rep. He is an actual human being sitting in front of you that's been harmed. And if you can make that connection, you can jump over any political barrier there is.
And I just want to also add in for clarity, uh, Josh Hawley originally was working on this as a standalone legislation or then as an add-on to the National Defense Authorization Act. And that is when these votes that they're talking about happened, and it passed the Senate uh, bipartisan. And Dawn and Karen, if you want to comment about what happened the first time it hit the House.
Mhm.
The House, we have learned, not just in Missouri, but in the federal government, the House is its own horrific beast. And there are so many different things that senators are allowed to do to leverage legislation that House members can't. The House has a level of secrecy that it operates in, and it's very, very difficult to navigate because there are places where this bill would go in the House. For instance, there were committees it would go to that people that chaired it, and we would try and get with those folks, but you never knew where it was when it could be killed. And somebody can kill a piece of legislation in the House and you don't ever see who they are. Does that make sense? It's not as public as the Senate was. And so we had to, in order to the speaker was vehemently, Speaker Johnson hated RECA, and he did everything he could to kill it. And the only way that we were able to beat him, and I'm going to use Senator Hawley's term, we had to melt him. We had to melt people that were around him. We had to strategize. And Representative Clemens remembers this, and I know he's got his hand up. We had to figure out who this guy trusted. He trusts Steve Scalise, for instance, from Louisiana. It's his buddy. Well, Scalise is sick with multiple myeloma, which was one of these cancers. So, there were things like that that we had to know and leverage with stories, get people within Louisiana that would be impacted by RECA, right? Because they lived historically in other places that would now qualify. But that's essentially how the main way that we got him on board, though, was to move Utah. And moving Utah, Mike Lee, for those of you, Senator Mike Lee, they told us we couldn't do it. People told us, they said, Mike Lee never changes his mind. Even if he's proven wrong, he will not change his mind. That's his thing. And for him to change his mind on RECA would put him in a horrific political situation for anything else that he goes after and wants after that, because he will have deviated from that. And we got him to change his mind. And the way we did it is, I don't know if you all know this or not, but the Latter-day Saints Church has a lot of pull in Utah, but Missouri actually has an extremely large population of members of that congregation, of that church. And we were able to strategically reach out to Missouri LDS members who were impacted and would be impacted by RECA, that had family that lived in Utah, and actually form the LDS community, actually help them grassroots form their own coalition to build that applied pressure. And that eventually moved their senator. And once he moved, Speaker Johnson he couldn't say no anymore.
That's amazing. In the interest of time, Representative Clements, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. And actually, I want to, before I ask my questions, I want to thank Karen, Dawn, and you, Harvey, for all your years of work on this. It's been quite a journey for us. But I do have some questions, actually, and a comment. I'll start with a comment first. I recently attended the Nuclear Summit last week in Columbia, Missouri. So there's a whole new breed of nuclear power they're trying to push here in Missouri. I will be always cautious about this because there's no place to go with the waste, and I've already seen what waste can do. That's worth everybody noting that it's out there and being pushed to our elected officials. It was a lot of utility committee members there, that sort of thing. But the other thing was, have we seen, and if we haven't, we're going to, and we should talk a little bit about charlatans, scam artists that say, we can get you your RECA money, just give us a call. And, you know, we've seen this in other places, and I'm wondering if we've seen it pop up yet and what we can do about it.
We have seen that pop
Yes.
up, Representative, and it's infuriating, and it makes you want to reach through the computer and throat punch somebody. You will not need a lawyer to apply for this program. Careful thought was given by Representative Clemens, Karen, and myself, Harvey, and others to make sure that if we were going to fight this hard for this legislation and get it, it also had to be accessible. So please be looking out for that. The Attorney General has put out a hotline, and we have been in direct contact with him, and he has said that he will absolutely go after somebody for consumer fraud and whatnot. He has no problem doing that. But also Senator Hawley's staff is working closely with the Department of Justice. My message is, I mean, that's who you're defrauding when you go after this program, not just the people that have been harmed, but you're really barking up the Department of Justice's tree, and that's not a place you want to be. They're very I will say we saw a huge amount of layoffs, right, in these federal agencies under this administration. And now what the Department of Justice is having to do is recall people back, but also onload people specifically for this program. But at the same time, midterms are coming up, and they do not want to be responsible for people, both blue and red. There shouldn't be any colors when it comes to this program, but in their mind, there are. And they don't want to be the ones responsible for people not getting their much deserved compensation. And so that is something that we have going in our favor. And it's kind of giving them a little bit more of a incentive to get this up as quickly as possible and do a good job.
Excellent. Any other questions? Karen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, any other comments from anybody?
Harvey, this is Gary.
Yeah.
I'd just like to congratulate Don and Karen and for their excellent work to get this finished. I know it's been a real journey for you guys, and I'm happy to see, and I'm also happy to see that's with the Department of Justice and not the Department of Energy. Thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
we are too.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Job well done. And I know it's not over. You guys, I know as much as you need a break, there's still a lot I know you're working on. It's appreciated, acknowledged. And don't know what else to say. Thank you.
What is there an update on the landfill problems?
We do. We have a cleanup that is scheduled to start in early spring of 2027. The EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin came out a few months ago toward the site and gave us an updated timeline. That's something that Harvey can also help keep you up to speed on, since he's following it closely as well with us. But one thing within the timeline, it's not just a start date, it's a series of dates that they have to meet and milestones in order to get to that date. And that's appreciated because each of those milestones is the opportunity for Karen and myself, along with Harvey and Rep Clemens, to hold EPA accountable. We'll be able to, as we push forward a little bit more, to figure out where we are. I'm actually hoping we can cut some months off, because it seems like everybody's getting along when it comes to Westlake, and that everybody really wants this cleanup to start ASAP. That wasn't always the case a few years ago, but it appears to be the case now. And just based on how quickly they're moving through these milestones, maybe we can get it a little sooner.
Yeah, the current effort that's going on is to make it as safe as possible for the community during the removal. So it's taking some extra time to do some extra due diligence and planning. So they're a couple of years past the date they expected to have the design work done for the removal. And that's because we were insisting on the safety of the community and questioning some of the methods that they originally proposed. So
Nicole,
here
did
we
you have
are.
a question?
Yeah, no, I just have a comment. I just want to commend you, Don and Karen, because I want to be honest with the group. Last year when I was campaigning, I knew very little about this issue. And so, it got on my radar and I started following and listening to Don and Karen and got up to speed on what was going on. And it's important that people in the community know about this issue. And then as a result of, listening and following you all, then I was able to talk to other community members who also didn't know about the issue or knew very little like I did. And I think that we all have a responsibility to share information. And so I just want to thank you all for doing such a wonderful job of sharing and explaining and the sessions and the town halls and everything that you held, and making it plain for, people who didn't know anything about the issue to understand it. And like I said, be able to share it and take it back to other community members. So thank
Yeah,
you
and
all
I
so
think
much.
it's more important than ever for people to continue to do that because it's not just in North County anymore. It's everybody and anybody who has ever lived in these areas that have been affected and that have been sick or have passed away. They need to apply for this. We need them to apply for this. And we don't want anybody to pass up that opportunity.
Very good. Thank you.
Oh, I
Oh,
have
another
a
question.
question.
Karen, go ahead.
Yes, Harvey, thank you. Yeah, thanks, everyone. I was thinking about, how there's all these zip codes and yet some people who are ill, may not be living or have lived, gone to school, work that close to the contamination sites. Is there going to be like some guidelines to let them know whether they, really should even try to apply, or how is that? Do you have any idea how those details will play out?
The way the zip codes were designed was through the Department of Justice's suggestion for approximately how far away from a contaminated site might have. And then also, to your point, the lived, worked, and went to school where the schools were and whatnot. But it is possible that based on some of the people talking about their illnesses that lived maybe just slightly outside of that zip code, right, that they were close enough. And, we recognize that while we have a good program, the ability to improve this program is probably going to be necessary. And so I think that just because a person doesn't live in a zip code and doesn't have what it takes to apply now, I think it's important that they know and to listen to their story that there may be time in the future. And if they have other people that they know, because we all know people right around us that are facing these rare illnesses and whatnot, it might be worth it to get a group of people in that other zip code together and have a meeting and for us all to sit and listen and figure out what's going on. As Harvey and Doug will tell you, there's been a lot of area that the feds have said wasn't contaminated. And then we've gone back and pushed, and then they found contamination in. And the way this waste was handled along Coldwater Creek and in North County, especially, but at Westlake as well, it is possible that there is another area somewhere that we don't know about, right? That was secretly dumped. And so I think we have to be open to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Website, Facebook, you guys want to?
So our
Go ahead. You do it.
our website is justmomsstl.org. Our Facebook pages are Just Moms STL Facebook page, Westlake Landfill Facebook page, and our new website specifically for RECA will be launched tomorrow, and it is it is, what is it, Don? RECA.
I'm looking for it right now. This is how busy we've been, you guys. I apologize.
One second.
I'm pulling it up right now. No, I'm not. We'll have to get that to Harvey so Harvey can share it because I don't see it on here.
Okay, and the time to apply, they have actually sounds like almost 2 years to figure it out and get their applications in.
They do, and we will be working very hard. We already are to make sure that this program gets reauthorized once that application date gets close. We have enough. This is the largest RECA expansion that's ever happened, and there's so many red states and blue states included that even their senators, everybody's already on board with reauthorization, but it's never too soon.
Okay, I got the website. It's RECA-Missouri-resources.org.
Do you have a link to that on your website?
Not yet.
But
We
you
will
will,
have, we will have as soon as it goes live.
right? So we can go to Just Moms and get the link to it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all your efforts, all your accomplishments, and all you will be doing in the future.
Well, you
Hope
too,
to have you
Harvey.
back.
You too. And you too, Representative Clemens and Councilwoman Banger.
And
Yeah.
LaDonna.
And yes,
It's-
Representative
yeah, and there's
Aveldon.
also been an amazing amount of citizen researchers along the way, especially at the beginning when we had to dig up the documentation to prove that it was worse than the government was saying. A lot of people contributed. Thank you again. We need to move on to our next speaker. So thank
Right.
you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, guys. You're awesome.
Thank you.
So as you all just heard, legislation matters. Whether it's legislation to block being able to sue for radiation exposure, or legislation that protects our rights to put ballot initiatives on the ballot. And just as a quick, oh, by the way, to show you how important ballot initiatives are in the state of Missouri, more people voted in favor of legalizing abortions, that Amendment 3 thing that went on. More people voted to legalize abortions in the state of Missouri than voted for Josh Hawley to be senator. Think about that and how important these initiatives are. And with that, Tony Easter, respect Missouri voters, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Harvey. All right. Are y'all seeing my screen? Okay. Well, a heavy team to follow. Thank you very, very much for your work. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. I will be happy to answer questions after my slides. My name is Tony Easter. I am co-founder and volunteer with Respect Missouri Voters. It is a cross-partisan, grassroots, volunteer-led campaign working to protect the initiative petition and make our government work for everyday Missourians like you and me. In 2018, I held a garden party to promote Clean Missouri and was so pleased when it won. In 2020, the legislature tricked us into overturning what we had just passed. Last year, I collected 878 signatures for reproductive rights, and the Missouri legislature already has an abortion ban for next year's ballot. And that's how I got here. It's the people versus politicians. Respect Missouri Voters is happy to be endorsed by the Post-Dispatch. I'm proud of our strong partnerships with the NAACP state and local units, Metropolitan Congregations United, Veterans for All Voters, Indivisible Missouri Coalition and local units, and Show Me Integrity, all based on long-term relationships. The Missouri State legislative session ended in May, and our politicians have been busy overturning the will of the people and passing the Let Politicians Lie Act, SB 22. On their way out the door, these out-of-touch politicians overturned and threatened 2 initiatives Missourians voted for just in November. Much of Proposition A is now undone, and Amendment 3 is being sent back to the ballot with extremely deceptive ballot language. Like, I can't say that strongly enough. It's so bad. The Let Politicians Lie Act puts our freedom to use the initiative petition in serious jeopardy. It gives the Secretary of State the ability to write misleading ballot language for initiatives, and then to drag out that fight over the language until it's too late for movements like ours to collect about 300,000 signatures to get on the ballot. For 117 years, since 1908, Missourians have had the constitutional right to take matters into our own hands when legislators fail to do their jobs. The initiative petition is how we, the people, have our say in the laws that we live by. Missouri is one of 26 states that uses a statewide initiative, and we are one of only 11 states without any law preventing the legislature from overturning the will of the people on initiatives. Arizona fixed this issue 30 years ago by passing the Voter Protection Act. Missouri never passed a protection like that, and Arkansas is also pursuing initiative protections this year. This isn't about partisan politics. This happened in the 1980s under Democratic control when voters passed the Hancock Amendment to limit taxes. Republican Governor John Ashcroft vetoed that bill, defending ballot initiatives as crucial voter freedom. He criticized politicians who attempted to take away voter power. It's happening again today. When politicians don't like what the people vote for, they try to take away our power. I spoke about the most recent examples, Prop A and Amendment 3, but this is not new. It's the exact same playbook they ran on the Puppy Mill Cruelty Act in 2010 and Clean Missouri in 2018. In 2010, Missourians voted for a law to end puppy mill cruelty in our state. The next year, legislators simply overturned it by getting its most important provisions. They did the same thing with Prop A, voted into law November of 2024 and gutted by May of 25. In 2018, Missourians voted to amend the state constitution with Clean Missouri, an anti-corruption and fair redistricting amendment. Then, in 2020, legislators put it back on the ballot with confusing language known as ballot candy and tricked us into overturning what we had just passed. If that sounds familiar, that's what they'll be doing with Amendment 3 now. On top of all that, they've passed SB 22. Yes.
Tony, if I can interrupt just for a second, we've had a request to make the slides a little more visible. Apparently, the notes are on the screen and the slide is behind
No, you're not supposed to be able to see my notes.
it.
Yikes. Yeah, that's super uncool.
No, it's not. It's been very informative, but people want to see the pretty pictures.
Well, gosh,
Not sure how to.
you should only be able to see, you're only supposed to be able to see. Okay, hang on a second. Boy, thank you for saying something. Okay, let's see what I can do here.
In the meantime, that's a great quote from Crystal.
Okay. So, on top of all that, they've passed SB 2020. From our supporter last year's candidate for governor and former state rep Crystal Quaid, SB 22 makes it impossible to get good ballot language for anything the Secretary of State wants to kill by writing a bad ballot title. The initiative process is effectively dead for anything the Secretary of State doesn't like unless we pass the Respect Missouri Voters Amendment. And if we pass this amendment, the initiative process will be stronger than ever before. This policy and this grassroots campaign model is desperately needed in Missouri. I've seen the polling and know that as this gets on the ballot, this will win. Our constitutional amendment will ban Missouri politicians from overturning initiatives the voters have already passed. It will ban them from attacking citizens' ability to use the initiative process, and it will ban them from deceptive language on ballots to trick voters. Over the last few months, we've held 25 town halls all across Missouri, gathering input from people just like you. Respect Mo Voters launched in December of 2024 and now has more than 9,200 supporters. We held our first policy summit in April using feedback from 3,000 Missourians, and held our second policy summit July 8th, getting feedback from our volunteers. After we get the Secretary of State's ballot language and poll on it, we'll decide which version to start gathering signatures for. We have to turn them all in at the beginning of next May. Then we get voters to vote yes in November of 2026. This isn't just wishful thinking, it's a proven strategy. In Michigan, grassroots campaign to end gerrymandering started with a simple Facebook post. I want to end gerrymandering in Michigan. Who wants to help? With a smiley face that I think really paid off. With 4,000 volunteers, they gathered 480,000 signatures and won. We're using their successful model here in Missouri, and when we win, we'll show everyday people in other states that they can do the same. This isn't about one election or one issue. This is about protecting our constitutional freedom to petition and to act when politicians fail to do their jobs. Article 1, Section 1 of the Missouri State Constitution says that all power is derived from the people. That's our Missouri Constitution. Here are the details of how the Respect Missouri Voters Amendment would protect the will of the people going forward. Our constitutional amendment bans the legislature from changing anything passed by initiative petition unless by bipartisan supermajority in the House and the Senate. It bans the legislature from making initiatives harder for citizens to use, and it imposes stricter ballot language rules for politicians and returns the power to rewrite that language to the courts. We can do this. There are places in this campaign for all kinds of people with all kinds of skills and interests. If you love connecting with people, become a field captain and manage signature gatherers in your area. If you're tech savvy, join our tech support team to help us organize and manage our signature collection. If you're creative, we need communications volunteers to help design materials and manage social media. If you prefer behind the scenes work, help with data entry, or become a notary to validate signatures. And if you're a social butterfly, host a house party or a happy hour to spread the word and raise funds. And of course, there is collecting signatures. That's 2,500 volunteers collecting signatures 2 hours a week for 12 weeks. There's a place for everyone in this movement, no matter your ability or experience. So who here is ready to step up and get organized and volunteer with Respect Missouri Voters Coalition? So maybe you want to take a screenshot of this slide, and please like, follow, and subscribe to our accounts on your favorite social media to share our message and stay up to date on the latest from Respect Missouri Voters. We hit our first fundraising goal at the end of June, $300,000. Now we will be able to poll on policy, print petitions, and move forward with the campaign. Please consider making a donation using this link, which you maybe can't see, to help us toward our next goal. As people-led movement, we ask folks to go a step further and start your own peer-to-peer fundraising page, also at this link, with a goal of getting just 10 friends to also make a donation. It is also possible to form a team to share a fundraising goal. Thank you. And what questions do we have?
Okay, if there are any questions, if you could take down the video, the shared.
Stop sharing.
There we go. Perfect. Okay. Any questions for Tony? Any comments?
Now you see how running a slideshow works from behind the scenes. I mean, how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Tony, I am willing to help. And one of the things that I wanted to know is what's the best place to go and look for the different opportunities of where I can help? I am furious about this because I also collected signatures for the reproductive rights, and I'm just like, this can't really be happening. So count me in. But where should I go to look at the options?
The simplest thing for me to say is respectmovoters.org, which is
Okay.
my next to my name there, and join.
Okay.
And after you do the basic join questions, you can keep going and take a volunteer survey. And that tells us all about you so we can help figure out places that might work well for you. Because like I said, we've got something for everybody. And Jim, if you don't want to be in a public facing, you don't have to be.
I've been protesting, and I've been gathering a list of people that will go with me. So we've had postcard parties, and I've got like 25 people on the list. So okay, game on.
Sounds like
Thank
you
you.
might like to be on the outreach team,
Perhaps. Okay, thanks.
where you go to those rallies and you take our 1/6 sheet flyer that you can print out
Oh,
from our website and
okay.
just
I know
share
we've
them with
seen each other.
people.
You and I have seen each other at by the Tesla location. So
Yes,
okay, sounds good.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey, Harvey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple comments, I guess. I was mentioning the nuclear power push in Missouri once again. Some folks may remember this, but back in the 1970s, when Callaway County Nuclear Facility was being built, Union Electric at the time asked for QUIP, which is construction work in progress, which basically winds up being a blank check for utilities. They never actually build anything, but they keep raising the rates. So we put it to a vote of the public. And overwhelmingly, Missouri said, no, we don't want that. And just this last legislative session, we pushed to do it to Missouri once again. Now, parts of that got stripped out, but several utilities now have QUIP, so they can start charging us without ever producing any work. The Prop A initiative from last year, which was a wonderful thing, the new language, just so everybody gets a little bit more mad, because I worked on the Prop A stuff. They actually put salt in the wound. They took away the consumer price index automatic raise for minimum wage. So now we have to have a legislative push to raise minimum wage every time. It doesn't automatically go up anymore. I'm carrying legislation to fix the puppy mill stuff, but you see the example time and time again. This is something that's critical for democracy. Missouri is one of 26 states that has a voice in its lawmaking abilities. That's something special, and we need to hold on to it dearly, because the legislature that I sit in and serve on, it's hard to keep these things from being defeated once people work so hard to put them into law. I just say more power to you. When the sheets come out, I'll carry them with my campaign.
Thank you. And it's understood that generally speaking, the Dems are not the folks we're talking about when we say politicians.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, thank you, Tony. Very, very helpful. I hope you get a lot of volunteers. If anyone has any questions, you can, if you forget how to sign up, email me directly and reply to the invitation you got, and I'll send you some of the websites, some of the links. Thanks again, Tony. It's a great effort. It's so important to preserve the voice of the people. Some of us think we have a democracy. Some of us think we have a representative republic. Some people take the representative republic idea a little bit too far, and this voter initiative is one of the ways to keep that in check. So thank you. I want to go back again now and talk one more time about Do Something St. Louis. It is coming up this Sunday. Get your tickets. You sign up for a time slot from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. They're 1 hour time slots. So 1 to 5. The last one is 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We're expecting a lot of people, so we're limiting it to 200 people every hour on purpose, so that we don't get overrun and everyone has a chance to go to the tables. It's being held at the Cheshire. It's a very nice venue. There's still plenty of tickets available. Let me go back one more time. It will let me get to the right page here. Seems like it's jumped around a little bit on me. We'll try here. Do something home. What? There it was. Okay. So we have also, if you want to volunteer, we need volunteers to act as ushers. You can sign up for as little as a 1.5 to 2 hour slot. Again, everything's kind of structured in 2 hour chunks. Here's a list of the organizations, lots of them. Some of them you may recognize, some you may not. So it's a good opportunity to come and learn what they do. We have almost 40 at this point, a very good variety. So I call it a buffet of groups, of advocacy groups that you can get involved with or learn about, or simply just sign up for their newsletters. And the list keeps going and going and going. So good opportunity to learn about what others are doing in St. Louis, and an opportunity if you're looking for something to do, good opportunity to do some things, some good stuff. So with that, are there any other announcements? Does anyone have any closing comments? Thank you, LaDonna, who just commented, great meeting tonight. Any other closing comments? Okay, if anyone has suggestions for future programming, please get in touch with me or Sydney. More than happy to entertain meeting whatever suggestions you may have. Sydney, any closing comments?
Nope, nothing from me. Thank you to all of our wonderful speakers.
Yeah, lots of people doing lots of good work, and it's important. It's important to preserve our democracy, whether you think it's a representative republic or not. So, thank you all. Have a good evening. Have a good week. Have a good month. See you next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.